Bob Baumauer, Cornelius Bennett, Jeremiah Castile, John Copeland, Eric Curry, Harry Gilmer, Clem Greiska, Lemansky Hall, John Hanna, Dude Hennessy, Bobby Humphrey, Leroy Jordan, Kermit Kendrick, Barry Krause, Antonio Langham, Marty Lyons, Don McNeil, Mal Moore, Billy Neighbors, Wes Neighbors, Major Ogilvy, David Palmer, Lamond Russell, Gary Rutledge, Jack Rutledge, Roger Schultz, Ken Stabler, Dwight Stevenson, Van Tiffen, Kevin Turner, Tommy Wilcox, and announcer Eli Gold. It's the stories, the lives, the championships, the losses, the coaches, but most of all, the legends talking about their love for the Crimson Tide. Now settle back. It's the first quarter, and it's kickoff time.
Let everybody know what Alabama football is all about. Now, everybody's talking about coaches, obviously, at Alabama lately. And this, though, I was going over the notes. I mean, even like a guy like Roger here, we were talking. You played for more than one coach. I mean, this isn't anything new necessarily, is it?
No, it's not new. Well, I played for 3 coaches.
Yeah.
Perkins, Curry, and Stallings.
Yeah.
And, of course, now these guys play for 3 coaches in 1 year. So my kids had 3 coaches since he's been at Alabama. But, you know, and everybody always asks me, what's the difference between the coaches? You know, Coach Perkins, I was on there, I was a freshman, and you guys that play for Coach Perkins knows how he treats freshmen. So there's really not an opinion to make it. He did give me a scholarship, so that was good. You know, and the rest of it, I had to give him my radishes off my salad. Then I played for Coach Curry, who came in at a different time and had a different philosophy, I guess, than some of the, you know, Bear Bryant. And then Coach Stallings came back in, a little more tough Bear Bryant disciple. And everybody always asked me, what's the difference between Coach Curry and Coach Stallings? And I'd have to say, one is, if Coach Curry, if you got in a fight, and it happens, college kids get to drinking, messing around with girls and stuff, fraternity guys get jealous at you, you get in a fight.
That's happened with the coaches lately.
Yeah, your coaches too. The blueprint for it. Hey, I'd love to play for Coach Price. You know, all the players say they love the guy. But I'll never forget, you get in a fight, Curry sends you to a 12-step program. He tells you how bad you are, and you're a terrible person. Stallings just wants to know if you won. You know, yes, sir. If you lost, then you got kicked off the team. And that's, you know, that's what I kind of see as the difference is. And of course, these guys have been through it.
Of course, you got to play the position you want. Now, how many positions were you offered, Biscuit, when you showed up? What's that old story about?
Ray Perkins promised me that I was going to get a chance to play, start out at linebacker for a week, switch to running back, and tight end. And after the first week practice at linebacker, I think after the first day he told me, hey, you know, this is the next Lawrence Taylor. So I mean, basically, I tell Coach Perkins all the time, he lied to me. and that's how I got to the university. Coach Perkins, you know, they promised me the world and got me here, and probably like most of the guys here, switched our positions.
But it worked out.
It worked out fine. I'm not complaining now.
Of course, what was that thing? Did you see that piece in the paper recently? And you might have been down there, that deal in Orlando, the retired NFL players, they were saying that linebackers take more abuse and have more memory lapses and stuff like that. So if you got stories about Cornelius,
Started before he played linebacker.
Causes them to lose their hair, too.
But it is, Eli. I was at the Retired Players Convention this year, and it's a study that's been done that linebackers have the highest chances of getting, you know, early detection of Alzheimer's and suffering depression.
They were like that before they ever played.
That's the reason they're depressed.
I mean, you got to think about guys like you now coming after us. So that was a tough deal.
John, you reacted on colors, though, didn't you? I mean, you saw the wrong color go by, you just hit the guy. I mean, if the wrong color jersey came by, you upended him.
No, I wasn't that way, but I just enjoyed the game. You know. I had a coach once tell me, he said, the difference between a defensive lineman and an offensive lineman, he said, defensive linemen have to jump up and down and holler to get fired up to hit somebody. Offensive linemen just naturally mean. They hit people because they enjoy it. They don't have to holler or do anything. They just hit people. So I think that's a lot of to it. You know, offensive linemen like to hit folks. That's all it is.
Now, weren't you there one time, Dwight, when you saw him you saw a wrong color flash by and he just took the guy and discarded him?
Exactly. You know, John Hannah, you know, he was, I consider the greatest offensive lineman ever played the game. Sure. And so I watched him a lot, and there was an incident. He was playing the Buffalo Bills. It wasn't Cornelius.
I wasn't there.
But it was he backed up, he was uncovered, and his head was on a swivel, and all of a sudden a color or different color jersey crossed his face, and he just attacked it, like knocked the devil out the guy or whatever and stuff. And we had some men can't believe it, but that's John Hannah, you know. He's a referee. Amazing guy.
But I've heard I've heard some stories about John Hannah. I run across guys now because I'm active in our Retired Players Association, and guys that played against John, and they say what Dwight said about John, that he was the meanest, toughest guy on the football field. And I believe him because he's still mean and tough now.
It looks like he's about to hit you now.
Yeah, I got bad knees, John.
But does that kind of stuff work? Did that work for you? I mean, you see a guy just pick him up and discard him. Did that work for you?
I mean, you know, different color jerseys meant it was, you know, it needed to be attacked. And the way John did it was just amazing that day. But John was such a great offensive lineman. I tell you the story, we were playing him up in New England, the Miami Dolphins, and we were, it was dive 15, and Manny, what's Manny's, how do you pronounce his name?
I don't remember.
But he was a running back anyway. They said when John Hannah gets in this stance, he's coming off the football. And so our whole defense was set for John Hannah to come off the football. They're going to run this play, dive 15. And they handed the ball off to the fullback. He runs up into the defense, runs up into the offensive line, and turns around and throws that ball back to Grogan. And it was a turnaround. Anyway, it was a play that we had diagnosed because John, when he did certain things, but that's the kind of player, you know. We designed a play. Anyway, John Hannah.
But Dwight's talking. I appreciate his comment. He is good. You know, there's no better center that ever played the game than Dwight. And I've played with a lot of good centers and seen a lot of them, but Dwight's the best. And matter of fact, Dwight, I told him today, I was trying to copy one time. I got killed in the game against Chicago because I was sitting there and I'd watch Dwight, and he had refrigerator Perry, and he'd get up under him, he'd flip him, and Perry would go on his back. And I'd breaking that film down, I was studying it and watching all that stuff. So I went out there and tried to flip refrigerator. The only person that got flipped was me. And so, you know, I had to go back to my style. But Dwight's complimentary, but he was one great football player. Don't let anybody tell you about it.
Story about Dwight. When I first got to Cincinnati Bengals, my coach was the guy I played with was Tim Crumrock. And he asked me where I was from. I told him University of Alabama. He said, man, I got a story about Dwight Stevenson. My rookie year, he said his rookie year in the league, they throw him out there against the Pittsburgh Steelers. And the coach, after a couple of series, the coach bring him over. So Tim, how's it going? What is he doing to you? Oh, coach, he hooking me. He cutting me off. He cutting me. He doing everything to me. Coach looking, all right, son, I think you're weighing him down.
But no, Tim was quite a player himself, the coach there at Cincinnati Bengals. I do recall it. But some of the things I learned how to do in the National Football League was out of trying not to be embarrassed there. You know, I played against a guy every day in practice, and it was like I hated to go
You went
and
against
watch.
Baumhauer, huh?
I went against Bob Baumhauer, and I would go into that meeting, and it was like embarrassing. And finally, one day, I figured out how to play Bob Baumhauer. He'd get very close to my face, right? And I had a free hand, you know, the center, so, and he'd get real close, he'd be ready to come out the football, and I just pushed his head down, and he hit the ground. He'd get up, won the fight and everything. I was like,
you would have to bring that up.
Cut that out, Dwight, you're hurting me now. So I did a couple there. All of a sudden, then he started, he adjusted his stance. So when he adjusted, he sat back a little bit. Then I could get underneath him, and that's what I was trying to do the whole time. But that was some of the things I developed was playing against a guy like Bob Bumhouse, no question one of the best defensive linemen to ever play here at Alabama and in National Football League.
I'll take care of you later.
I got a Barry Krause from a guy in my class from high school and playing here at the university. Was Barry Krause. He wanted to pose from the goal line stands, the wrinkles in his back. Yeah. And when I was playing high school, I was running back and tried to dive over the goal line in a high school game. And Philip Brown, who was the linebacker here, he said that's how his back was, that same pose when he stopped me going across the goal line. You could see his back, Kermit and these guys, they were around. That's how his back was. He had that Krause stance. He was holding me up in the air. You can see that and taking a picture of it or whatever. But that was, that 79 game, I think that sold me on the university also, that one particular play in itself. And saw Don McNeil. I remember the Sugar Bowl. You got hurt towards the end of the game. Those kind of things, to see you guys from my growing up on Alabama football, to see you guys, it's just amazing to be in the same room with all you guys.
This is remarkable. I mean, Bobby, you look around here, and you're coaching now in arena football. I mean, you look around and you realize what this university, I mean, every school has stars. But heck, you look at the least accomplished guy in this room who's played football is, nearly an All-American. That's everybody else. Everybody's got Super Bowl rings, all pro. This is remarkable.
Well,
or Pro Bowl appearances.
Well, I was hoping I could get a lot of these guys in shape, and I know we can win a Arena 2 Cup championship.
You're getting some good pointers here.
And I was sitting down talking to David, and we was talking about all the guys that have been in the NFL and have moved on, and that just speaks of how well the university go out and get some of the great talent throughout, not just in Alabama, but throughout the country. But he was telling me that at the time that he was in the NFL, that there were 30, I think the number was 38 players from the University of Alabama was in the NFL at one time. And that's remarkable. Amazing. It's amazing. And you look around this room, and just to be, in a group like this here, All-Americans and guys who have been on national championship team. I wasn't fortunate enough to be on the national championship team, but just to be a part of this group and make me feel like I'm part of that national championship.
Hey, Mal, let's talk about Coach Bryant. That's a subject that everybody loves to talk about and share stories. What, for people who might not have been around, might not have been born back in those days, what made him such a special man and a special coach? What did he have that others are searching for and have never found?
Well, I guess to quote Bobby Marks, whatever he had, or whatever it was, he had a lot of it. He was, and Alabama, is so fortunate to have had him for 25 years as a coach, and certainly he was here as a player in the 30s on a national championship team, a Rose Bowl team. Part of the great tradition that was started back in the 20s with Wallace Wade, one of the greatest coaches, a Hall of Famer, with Frank Thomas, who was Coach Bryant's coach, a Hall of Famer. Then for Coach Bryant to come back and, to build on that great tradition. And then for Gene Stallings and to come in and win another national championship just to add on to the tradition. But Coach Bryant is a name across America, that is very, very powerful. He had something about him that a lot of people just simply didn't have or don't have. He attracted people to him. He was a great, great ambassador for our university, for the state of Alabama. And I think he's a name that will be and should be remembered. And as everybody that comes through here that tacks on to this tradition and to the greatness of Alabama. And just like today, having these people here, all of these players here that from different ages and different times.
He's scared to death of it.
Yeah.
That's what he had. That's what he had. He was scared of it.
That's right.
And we practiced. Mal was assistant coach. We always said you could tell an assistant coach at Alabama because one eye was on the field, one eye was on the tire. we were practicing one day, and Coach Bryant fell asleep in the tower, and we kept practicing. Finally, the horn fell off his leg, and it made a sound. He woke up and said, "Take it in." We was going in. Musso looked at me and says, "Damn, I'm glad he wasn't dead. We'd never got off that thing." That's what he had. I mean, I remember,
I tell you, what he's saying is so true. You try not to look up at the tower after every play. If a good play happened, you wanted to look to make sure he was watching. But you wouldn't turn your head, you just cut your eyes. Everybody wide-eyed. You could, yeah. And it was, he had that air about him, or that toughness about him, and he was as mentally tough a man as you've ever known.
He sent 10 guys to the hospital my sophomore year with heat stroke and dehydration, and a bunch of people quit. And next day we go in the locker room.
Weren't you one of them?
I didn't quit. I fell asleep. But so I couldn't quit.
There's stories about you coming off the field packed
That was
in
Tennessee.
That was Tennessee.
But, so anyway, he comes in, whines and watch. He says, "Boys," he says, "y'all learned a big lesson yesterday. Human body's an amazing machine. You'll push it and think you're going to die, but you'll not die. The human body will always pass out before it dies." That's how it felt. And that's what it was about him. I mean, dang gum. I mean, let's face it. I remember I was about to get drafted in the NFL. I said, "Coach, I'd like to, maybe after the season, talk to you about hiring an attorney." And he looked at me and says, "Hell, John, you ain't good enough to need no damn attorney." And that's the way he was, he's tough. I mean, he's a great man. I admire him and love him, but he was, let's call a spade a spade.
Snake, you never made him cut his eyes, did you?
Yeah, I agree with what these guys are saying, that he had there was something about him, a knack or something that he had that was different from everybody, that we always looked at it, it made you want to please him. You would do anything you could to make him slap you on the ass and say, "Way to go," and recognize you in front of the rest of the team and that sort of thing. And he's really intimidating. I just stared at him all the time. When he walked on the field or came in the dorm, and just mouth open and stared at him all the time. And he had a knack, a way of putting things in perspective and saying things, like a pregame meal was no big deal. Not any rah-rah type, talks. It was all, go with your position coaches and out there, let me do all the arguing with the referees. Is any fighting to be done out there? I'll do all the fighting for us out there. And, like I always remember a play in the Sugar Bowl. We were playing Nebraska in the Sugar Bowl in 1967 Sugar Bowl game, and they were a heavy favorite. They were a much bigger, stronger team than we were. We were number 3 in the country. I think they were number 2 or something. And first play of the game, we walk out of the locker room. We're walking onto the field, out of the locker room, down the side of the field. And it had been drizzling rain all weekend long down in New Orleans, and a wet field probably favors Nebraska. Bigger, stronger team, probably ran the ball a little better than we did. And coming out of the locker room and get right in the corner of the end zone. It had been drizzling rain all weekend, and I swear to God, he stepped on the field and it quit raining. And so we're walking, it quit raining, and we're walking down the sideline, and he had that Chesterfield. He smoked those non-filtered Chesterfields, and he's looking out from under that houndstooth hat, and he was always going. And so we're walking down to midfield and first play of the game, and he looked at me and he said, "Stabler, I want you to throw the ball just as far as you can throw the son of a bitch on the first play." And then later, one of the offensive coaches, Ken Meyer, came over and said he wants you to run 55 sprint out, and Perkins does a little down and out, and it was the first play of the Sugar Bowl, and the Perkins catches it, and we score 6-7 plays later, and for all practical purposes, the game was probably over. But just the way he phrased things, said things, and it's a hard question to answer when you go around and you travel and somebody says, "What's it like playing for Coach Bryant?" It's hard to explain that unless you've been around him and see the effect he has on people. We would play teams that were always bigger. We'd play teams, whether it be Tennessee, Auburn, Mississippi State, whoever, play teams that were always bigger, always faster, always more of them, and we always won. And I think it was because of Coach Bryant. I think he out-coached the other guy, out-motivated the other guy. We were always smaller. We were always not as fast. They had more players than we did, and we lost 3 games in 3 years because of him.
And Eli, John's right about how he'd get on the players, but I can remember him doing the same thing with coaches, assistant coaches. I mean, we played Mississippi State, John Bonds. You know, so we weren't the only ones scared of him.
What did he do with the assistants there?
Oh, he would. I'm gonna give you one story with Coach Donahue, Marty's coach. We're playing Mississippi State. John Bonds, quarterback, ran all over us the first half. We couldn't stop them. They just ran the option, and we tried all different kind of things. We come in at halftime, and there's complete silence. We're behind, and we know that Coach Bryant, I mean, we're in for it, you know. So he comes over to the defensive side, and he comes up to the board and looks at the board, and he says, Ken, we can stop these guys. I want this, 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 and this done. And Coach Donahue looks at him and says, Coach, we don't have that defense. And he said, you got about 10 minutes to find it. And turned around and walked away. Well, Coach Donahue, he goes over, he always carried a briefcase, he's flipping through things, and he comes up, and sure enough, goes out there and draws it up on the blackboard and said, this is what we're going to do, boys, the second half. Went out there, shut them down, wound up winning a football game. But the example I was trying to make was, yeah, he was hard on players, but he was also pretty hard on these guys, too.
Yeah, he had a great deal of pride, though, in the tradition that was built here. My sophomore year, we beat Southern Miss 36-6 and came in to celebrate after the game. And Coach Bryant walked in and basically said, you know, I don't know what you guys are celebrating for. You embarrassed the red jerseys. And I was rooming with Bob at the time, and I said, Bob, didn't we just win? He goes, yeah. Coach Bryant made us go out the very next day and play the game completely over. And we had beat Southern Miss 36-6. But he really said that, you know what, the tradition, the people that made those red jerseys proud. You have a responsibility to wear them the same way, and he held everybody accountable for wearing them that way.
And Harry, that's, you know, there is that affinity between your age group and the younger guys. That's what's so important.
Well, I was just waiting to jump in because everybody has their heroes. And Coach Bryant's hero was Frank Thomas, his coach when he played at Alabama. I played here in the early 40s, played for Frank Thomas. We enjoyed great teams. Alabama did well during those times, and it was fine. There was never a week that Bryant, he was at Kentucky at most of this time, and he would call Frank Thomas and talk over game strategies, and that was the guy he looked up to. The guy he talked over the problems with. And talking, every time I would see Coach Bryant, and he was still away from here, he would ask me, how's Coach Thomas doing? He was interested in how Coach Thomas was doing. So all of us all of us have our heroes, and even as tough as Bryant was, he had his too, and Frank Thomas was the main one.
And I think what is interesting about Frank Thomas is, too, he was Nuke Rockney's quarterback, played at Notre Dame, was a great player, and Coach Bryant always had a great respect for Notre Dame, for Moose Krause, you know, that was his buddy there. And that's why the first Notre Dame game in the Sugar Bowl was so big to Coach Bryant, because he recognized the great name that Notre Dame has and the great name that Alabama has. It was two of the greatest names in America in college athletics playing, and how important that game was.
You know what I thought, Eli? He taught me really early on about the whole team and oneness and being together and that sort of thing, and no one player is any more important or bigger than the team itself, or the school itself. And you know, I was after that junior year, we beat Nebraska in the Sugar Bowl, and I come back out my senior year for the spring practice, for the fall practice and spring practice, and going through a drill where you run through 2 or 3 players and blocking dummies on each side, turned and twisted and tore cartilage in my knee. So Coach Bryant told me not to practice, don't come out to practice. And I was coming off of a good junior year, and get your knee well and that sort of thing, and we'll get through spring without you. And I got kind of bored with that whole thing because I couldn't practice. The first time I'd ever been hurt, so I started going and visiting my girlfriend down in Mobile. And
This just in.
You just did. So we'd have study hall. You know, we'd have those study halls from 7:30 until 9 o'clock. Well, after that, I'd skip study hall, jump in a car, drive 4 hours to Mobile, go to Pritchard, Alabama, and hang out with this girl I was seeing down there for 4 hours, and then jump back in the car and drive 4 hours back, or 3 hours back to try to make a 7 o'clock class, which I didn't make many of those. And so one thing led to another, and I was keep going back and forth down there to see that girl and chasing and hanging out down there and not going to school and that sort of thing. And I got a telegram one day at my parents' house. I got a telegram that says, "You have been indefinitely suspended." That's exactly what it said. "You have been indefinitely suspended, Coach Paul W. Bryant." I got a telegram the next day from Namath, and it said, "He means it." I mean, he had to do the same thing with Job. So the hardest thing I've ever had to do was try to come back, get eligible to play by SEC standards, come back, go to summer school, take all those tough classes to become eligible, and then I had to go in his office, and it's the hardest thing I've ever had to do. I was so intimidated by him, that toughness and fairness about him. And when you go in his office, you know how it is. You see the replica of it over in the Bryant Museum, and you go in there, and that desk is raised, and that couch is soft. And so you go in there and sit down in front of him, and you're talking to him kind of like that, you know. And so I go in there and say, "Coach, I've done everything necessary to become eligible by SEC standards. My grade point's back up, and I want to come back out for the team." He's spitting that tobacco like that, and he looked me dead in the eye, and he said, "You don't deserve to be on this team. Get your ass out of here." I said, "Well, I'm going to come back out anyway, Coach." He said, "We'll see." So I went, and 2 days later, Jimmy Sharp, Pat Dye. Jimmy Sharp and Pat Dye took care of me. They just took great care of me the whole time I was there to keep me going straight, trying to keep me going straight. And they came to me and said, "Coach Bryant says you can come back out for the team." Well, that was, you know, excited about that. Get back out there the first day of practice in the fall. And as you guys know, the uniform dictates the team you're on. Red jersey, first team; white jersey, second team; blue jersey, third team; orange jersey, fourth team; green jersey, fifth team. And he always had this thing he would call you when you were out of favor with him. He'd ever call you a turd? Been called 100 times. Well, I came back out after being all SEC.
Where's Coach Grisco?
Come back out after being all SEC and MVP in the Sugar Bowl, and I get my basket, and it had a brown jersey in it. Brown jersey in it. So I put on that brown. And he made me work myself back. He made me work myself back to the top of that by doing these drills. He would take the linebackers, which was Jackie Sherrill and Tim Bates and Paul Crane and a bunch of tough guys, and I was a quarterback, and I was under a center, no offensive lineman. Take the ball and sprint out. All of you put your hat on him. All right, now do it this way. You know, and all afternoon and getting the bap, 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 by all these guys, and then work my way up through the practice, work my way up. He would have never started me. I didn't give a damn what I did. We played Florida State in the opener in Birmingham, and Joe Kelly started the game, and we went 3 and out. And then on the second series, when we got the ball, I was standing there beside him, waiting to go in, and he hit me in the back so hard it knocked the breath out of me. He said, "Go ahead." So we went in, and it's like somebody said a minute ago, you win a game, and they take you back and treat you like we played Florida State, and they weren't ranked, and we were coming off a number 3 in the country, and probably number 3 in the country coming into my senior year, and we beat them. It was a 37-37 tie. He took us back to Tuscaloosa 6 a.m. the next morning out there doing goal line, Teach you boys, over and over and over. And that lesson for me out of all of that was, not one player is any bigger than the rest. And that was one thing that I really noticed about him, that he treated everybody the same, from the groundskeeper of the school to the president of the school to the bus driver to the grounds guys. Everybody, we're all in it together. We're all the same.
I'm watching Clem and Don and Dude. Everybody's nodding their heads. Coach Russell, everybody. That clearly must be the way it was, right, Clem?
Right. You know what? We go back 40-some years with this group, and with Harry and I, we go back a little further than that. And without the X's and O's and everything, what really fascinates me is the bond between us. In other words, the 45-46 team and the 90 team and the 66 team, they're all in one shell. In other words, just camaraderie. You know, I hadn't seen some of these guys in 10, 12, 15 years, and here they come in today and just hugging and acting like they're really glad to see us.
Harry, what do you want to add there?
I had an experience with Bryant. After I started coaching in pro ball, I was with Van Brocklin at Minnesota, and I was coaching receivers at the time. And this was the year that Namath was finishing up here. And Namath, there was a talk of a big contract, the first real big money in pro football. So I'm back here. I'm living in Tuscaloosa, so I go up there, and Bryant sees me with his door open. He sees me walk in there. I'm just coming in to say hello, and he says, "You're exactly the man I've been looking for. I'm sure glad to see you. I got to talk to somebody." He says, "You know, Joe is going to probably be the first guy taken in the draft this year. And I need to talk to somebody about salaries up there." He says, "What does a first-round pick get?" And I said, "I have no idea." "What do you mean you don't have any idea? You're coaching up there, aren't you?" I said, "Yeah, but I coach receivers." "I don't care what he makes. I'm better off if I don't know what he makes." I said, "If he makes too much, he can get rid of me." So I said, "We'll just, I honestly don't know I don't get into salary talks with these folks." And so he comes back and he says, "You can't tell me that." Well, he kind of got my dander up. I kind of bristled a little bit, and I said, "Well, I'll tell you what, if you won't listen to me, I can tell you what one guy made that was the first pick of the draft a few years back." He says, "What are you saying?" I said, "Well, there was a guy that was the first pick in the NFL draft, and he got a $10,000 signing bonus and a $10,000 a year salary. And that's the truth, and that's all I can tell you about it. And I don't know what anybody made since then." And of course, I was telling him what I got. And he stood up, and, you know, big, impressive guy. He stands up and he looks down at me and he says, "Hell, you don't know what they're doing, do you?" And with that, we got up off of the steps of the old building, the old office building, and he walks back in and leaves me sitting there.
Now,
It was over.
Did Coach Perkins, was he able to help you a lot? I mean, clearly you were going to be a top flight NFLer. Did he sit down with you?
He had great lasting impression on my life. He took me aside, I guess this spring of my second year, and started grooming me for my life after the university in pro football. Yeah, we would have great talks about my future, and even offered that if I ever needed an agent, you know, when it came time for that, if I wanted him to, he'd help me negotiate a contract. I mean, that's how he took care of me. I don't know if he had talks with other guys that had NFL potential or not, but he really, really has that impression. And on me now, I think about things that he told me 20 years ago, 18, 20 years ago now in my life. And just like the things that he learned from Coach Bryant, Coach Perkins has that kind of impression on me personally. Now, a lot of guys didn't get along with Coach Perkins, but we had a special relationship. On days during the spring practice, I'd go out and, I was kind of overpowering to some of the younger guys, that they would be in awe of me on the field. Guys, freshmen coming in, I'd go out and first 5 or 10 plays of practice, man, I'd bang, 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 because I didn't want to practice that day. And he'd get Biscuit, "You get out. You just come over here so we can have practice, because we can't practice if you're out there." I would disrupt practice, but that was my intention. I did not want, I had probably hung out the night before or something, but I wanted to get out of practice, and he would throw me a bag of tobacco, and I'd stand over there and pop a chew in and stand next to him the rest of practice or whatever, but he really took good care of me.
Well, I was that guy who was beating. And he told me, he goes, just let me lick you a couple times, I can get out of practice. He goes, I'll give you part of my signing bonus. I still hadn't seen it yet. But he would chew tobacco. I always thought that was funny. When I was a freshman, and this Cornelius Bennett, this guy's a great football player, over chewing tobacco with a coach, and I thought, that's unbelievable.
What a country.
Yeah.
What a country.
Cornelius was talking about what Coach Perkins told him when he could play this position, this position. It was I believe it was January or whatever, '87, and Perkins is at my house. Coach Perkins is at my house on Saturday. We're sitting there eating lunch, recruiting. I'd already committed to him and so forth, and my mother asked him, said, Coach Perkins, we're hearing rumors that you might be going to Tampa Bay. No, ma'am, Miss Turner. I'm going to be at Alabama for a long time, you know. So, well, as the story goes, that Tuesday, after that day, he was gone to Tampa, and my mother was she was really upset. And and about 6 years later, Coach Perkins is my offensive coordinator at New England. My mom comes up for a game. She goes, where's that Perkins guy? I want to see him. See what I said, Mom, this is my boss now. So just let it go. But he's always been really
Dude,
good.
I was watching these guys were telling great Coach Brian stories, and you were smiling and nodding, and you pulled out the piece of paper. I believe you got a whole thing full of stories.
Coach Brian loved me. If he hadn't loved me, he'd have fired me a long time ago. But Coach Donahue says, I'm going to show the film Coach Bryant playing in the bowl game. I said, hell, you have to do all that on the floor. You can't touch it or break the damn tape and everything. So he gets running. I said, wait a minute, I'm going to grade him. So some more coaches come in there. So Donahue run it, and I said, oh, hell, he loafing that time. That's a man. Next play, I said, damn, shut his eyes. He didn't even see the man. That's a minus. That's two minuses. I went on, I said, yeah, he don't get off on the snap. The name of the game is you got to get off when everybody goes. About that time, he opened the door, came in. Donahue said, Coach Bryant, Duty's graded you on that film.
How did he say that?
Duty. And I looked at Coach Bryant, and he looked at me and he went, back out. I don't know what he come in there for.
He didn't want to hear the grade.
Oh no, so but I'll give you this other one. This is one, and Mal's in this one. And Mal,
he's squirming again. Already.
Mal's got it.
I never know what he's gonna tell.
What did you say?
That's what you gonna tell.
Well, I ain't gonna tell that one bad. I'll tell this good. Anyway, he's down on the sidelines. And he's on the phone. He's got a new headset, and Mal has. And I'm up in the press box, and I got on two, and I can hear and see what they're doing and everything. And Coach Bryant come up here, and he said, "What in the hell is going on out there?" And Mal, he just grabbed at the headset and almost tore his damn ear off right here. And all at once, he said, anybody know what's going on? So he got the phone, and I went. I guarantee you that's truth in the clip.
That is true. It was the first time I was ever on the phones on the sideline. Richard Williamson was on the other phone. He was we were playing Vanderbilt. We were supposed to win the game. Fourth quarter, we were trailing. And Coach Bryant was coming to me. I'm on the defensive phones with dude to find out what they're doing defensively to stop us. And the dude would say, God, man, I'll tell him to go to Richard and talk with Ken Meyer to see what they're doing defense. We're monitoring their offense. And I said, dude, this cord's too short. I can't get away from it. And while we were arguing about the game, Coach Bryant just rips those phones off my head. And he said, hello. Hello. He threw the phones back in. I caught the phones, put them in, and Duke said, he's mad night. I don't We're getting beat in the fourth quarter, and it wasn't because Dude and I wasn't helping, but we ended up winning the game, but it wasn't because of Dude and I. I mean, we were trying to dodge Coach Bryant.
I got one more to tell you. This is I went scout down in Tulane. Went scout down there and everything, and we were going to play them. And I came back, and I never had to give a scouting report before. He said, dude, I'm needing about 30 minutes on the scouting report there. I said, yes, sir, Coach. I said, 30 minutes? He said, I said 30 minutes. So I go, and I have to do this way. Here's this damn blackboard right here. And I'm drawing up, and you're supposed to start with the kicking game. If you don't, you're in trouble. Well, I screwed that up. I didn't get it. So I got up here, and I was writing with this hand, racing with this. I went on. And I said, they got a big old fullback. He weighs about 240. We stop him, we can beat him. He go on. I said, it's offense, and here's the defense. And I went over that. And I sit back down, and I turn around and look, and all assistant coaches and the players were right like that. And what the hell's going on? So I went on, and Coach Bryant, we were walking out on the field, and I was ahead of him, but not for long. He passed me pretty quick. He said, did you even go to the damn game? I said, yes, sir, Coach. I said, yes, sir, Coach, and I look up, and I'm supposed to be right in this pair of defensive ends. And he was behind me, and when I looked up, he was down there, just right like that, just that quick, going down there and never said another thing. So that's why he loved me. I tell you, he loved me or I wouldn't have been there.
No, when I was a quarterback, Coach Moore was my quarterback coach, and he was very excited on the field. You know, he would talk. He's on the phones, and he'd come over here and put his hand on my shoulder pads, you know, as I was on the sideline. And, you know, everybody's had those little white slobber marks right here on the side of your mouth, you know. So about every game, he'd be over, Gary, run right 36, right 30. Then all of a sudden, he'd get my jersey and wipe his mouth off with my jersey. You know. And I had more sweat there than I did from myself, you know. But another story I had real quick about Coach Bryant. The first play I ever played at Alabama was my sophomore year, and I backed up Terry Davis. And that year was the year they had tearaway jerseys. And I was the backup quarterback, and it was the first game of the year, but I really wasn't expecting to go in. I was over there sitting on my helmet watching the game pretty much, and all of a sudden they're hollering, Rutledge, Rutledge, get in here. And Terry's trotting off with his jersey torn. Well, Coach Moore gets me on the sideline. He's next to Coach Bryant, says, I run over there to him. He says, Gary went right 49, counter 49 option. It's the hardest wishbone play ever, where you fake to the right, you reverse out, turn your back to the defensive end, and you go pitch it outside. First play I've ever, you know, I've ran it in practice 100 times, but my first varsity play, you make me run the hardest play. Well, I reverse out, the end luckily is not coming at me hard. I run out there and I pitch it on the ground. Pitch it on the ground. Well, I'm trotting back off the field because Terry Davis is coming back on. And so I went running back over to Coach Moore and Coach Bryant. And I was expecting to get chewed out. I was expecting to get reamed really bad. And Coach Bryant looks at me and says, Gary, I just want to apologize for Mal for calling that play.
You know, you were talking about motivation, and I don't know how other people, but I remember when I came here, there's 2 dining halls at Coach Bryant's dormitory. And there's the one on the left, you walked in and you stood in line, and you got spaghetti and lettuce and hamburgers and stuff like that. But now, dude was talking about grading the winner. Now, if you graded a winner, at 6 o'clock, you would go in and you would sit down, and these ladies would come and they would serve you steak every night. Now, you might have Cornish hen or lobster or something with it, but you always had a steak. And I'd be darned if you talking about motivation. Whether, am I going to eat spaghetti? Am I going to eat steak? That's a pretty good motivator. And, they don't do that anymore because everybody wants, what's they call it, equilibrium or whatever it is. All these educators have forgotten what football makes men out of you instead of going around and, everybody want to be parody crap. It's just, it's terrible what they've done.
How about Coach Stallings? What was he like in this kind of deal, motivation and cutting up and at the same time being serious? Was he that at all?
Coach Stallings, he was like that, but Coach Stallings, he always believed in his movies now. You had to go to the movies on Friday night. You had to go to the movies on Friday night.
His movie.
His movie. It wasn't our movie, it wasn't a movie of our show. He picked the movie. And it always had something to do with guys fighting in the military. Always had to, there was some kind of war movie we had to go see. So I think we went to see, I think it was A Few Good Men or something like that. It may have been something else way before then. We went to see the movie. So then we get in the meeting room that night. So his speech always started out with the movie, what the guys did in the movie, and then it'd go on into football, and he'd start talking about it. And then this guy, he believed in what he saw. He fought for whatever he believed in. And if we come out and we go pro right, so-and-so, Roosevelt, what do you have if that guy comes down there? And when nobody would expect it, so they didn't have the answer. And right at the last minute, Coach Stallings said, hell, man, how can we play a football game if you don't know what to do? He believed in his movies now, but it was fun. Coach Stallings was a great motivator.
When he started out, he let us pick the movies. But I picked he let the captains pick the movies my senior year. I picked one that was so bad, I think it was Highlander 2 or something like that. Really bad. And after that point, he chose the movies from that point.
Well, sometimes we picked Goodfellas one time, and he didn't like all that cussing. Yeah. He goes, hey, man, I can't take Ruth Ann in that movie. That thing is all, my golly. And it was one of those, like, we loved it. I get you fired up for a football game, and he's like, oh, man, that's awful. Beat the guy up, put him in the trunk. But, Coach, I'll never forget our first meeting with Coach Stallings, of course, as all the coaches that I had. We go in a meeting, and Friday we're usually going over the game plan, but we're not going over it in detail. And we're all sitting there, all the offensive linemen, and of course we know our assignments. And he comes in the meeting, he goes, hey, Schultz, what do we run out of the blue formation? I'm thinking, blue? I mean, because when I'm in the huddle, they go, red, right, blue, 20. I think of the number, and I just hear that. I don't pay any attention to the first part of the call. And he kept asking, what do we run out of this formation? And I said, goal line, or goal line. He goes, yeah, well, blue, silver on goal line, blue in the field. That's it. So I got a reprieve from that. We had a guy named Charlie Dare, and they go, Charlie, what do we run out of this formation? He goes, or what formation we run these plays out? He goes, I? And he goes, oh, and he sees his face because he goes, don't know, and so that whole time we were sitting there going, like, God, we've never been quizzed like this, and he's really going. Of course, we lose the first 3 ball games that year, but he's like thinking because we don't know the formation. So now we have this little cheat sheet every week, and then finally, I think they just gave up on us. He goes, these guys are the dumbest linemen I've ever had. They ain't never gonna know. But I said, who cares what formation we run a play out of? But now, after coaching a little bit, you understand it. But I'll never forget all that. And he'd get so mad at us. I don't know. I'm sure he didn't sleep.
How about him dealing with you as a quarterback?
He was tough. It was like father son, type atmosphere for me. It was
stepson.
Yeah, stepson, exactly. And no disrespect, I'll never forget about the first. And Mal knows this, Coach Moore, from I mean, I couldn't throw a spiral. I think the first week I don't know if I ever threw a spiral by some people's idea the whole time I was at Alabama. But he kept telling me, man, John Mark could do better than that. I'm going, who in the world is John Mark? I had no idea who John Mark was. And then when we realized what it was, realized what he was saying. But he was a motivator. It was funny. He'd take a movie, I mean, Home Alone. We saw Home Alone before the Auburn-Alabama game, like 92. We're all going, oh, what's he going to get out of this one? And he's like, all the obstacles this kid faced, and starts going into all these different things. You got to have strategy, man. You got to have a plan. But I tell you, I mean, I grew up watching most all of these guys, except for the guys I played with. And I mean, it's an honor for me to be here. Somebody said outside a while ago, they said, could you imagine playing for this team? And I said, no, I'd never play. I'd be sitting the bench the whole time with these guys. But
it'd be fun to watch, though, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it'd be fun to watch. But Coach Bryant was a guy that I grew up wanting to play for. And I felt like out of Gene Stallings, I got the next best thing. I really did. I'll never forget, I was almost headed to Auburn because Bill Curry wouldn't give me a shot at all. And I said, God, you got to open up the door somehow. And Bill Curry got fired. No, I don't want to say praise God. Bill Curry got fired, but I was glad it happened because I had an opportunity to go play for Alabama, play for Gene Stallings, and a guy that I still respect a bunch.
Bill Curry came up to Massachusetts one time to do an alumni thing, and I took him around to some of the high schools and stuff, try to introduce him around, try to get some players. So we're going back to Boston this meeting, and Curry looks at me and he says, well, I got a plan. I said, well, what's that, Coach? He said, well, first year we're going to come in, we're going to try to have a winning season, and second year we're going to try to, compete for the SEC, and then we're going to, 4 or 5 years, try to go for a national title. And I looked at Bill, I said, Bill, I think you got Alabama football wrong. He said, what do you mean? He said, well, Alabama people just figure if you win the national championship, everything else will take care of itself. I knew he wasn't going to last. He just didn't have it for Alabama football. He just didn't have it.
Coming up in the second quarter, did you know that they used to play with helmets you could fold up and put in your back pocket? The Legends of Alabama Football continues on Volume 2.